And we are live. Welcome to the 667 Experience episode number 2. My name is Shane Carling, and I am here with my good buddy Jordan Rouse. And we are super excited to bring you another episode of the 667 Experience, where we talk about six packs, six figures, and Sabbath. Basically, we talk about health, wealth, and spirituality. We like to dive down the rabbit hole on a lot of different subjects. So if you are easily triggered, you should definitely pay attention because this might just blow you out the water. We're gonna dive down on some topics tonight. We're gonna have a lot of fun doing it. So Jordan, why don't you introduce what we've decided to talk about tonight?
Yeah, so we decided to talk about tribalism and the rise of it in society, meaning that people attach themselves to a certain point of view, a certain viewpoint that exists, and then they have to adhere to all the rules of that viewpoint. Meaning if you're a blue person, now everything is blue, and all the ideas that are blue have to become your blue. So we're talking about today, we're going to unpack together. I think we're going to debate this a lot because I'm going to have some differing points of view on this, I bet, than you are. And we're going to talk about what's healthy about that and what's unhealthy and where it comes from, and like talk about evolution and all that fun stuff, and like how we don't go all the way down the crazy path together because, you know, the dodos all went off the cliff together. Remember that story, right? And so that's tribalism at its worst. Right? Or if we go to its darkest point, when you put a military uniform on somebody in the past and all these genocides that have occurred, people acted in that uniform as they wouldn't as a human being. It changed them as an individual because they became part of the military, this tribe, this point of view, and committed atrocities. So we're going to unpack the good and the bad and the left and the right of all those things. So Shane, we'll start here. I think this is a really good spot for tribalism. What are some of the things that you see troubling? And let's talk from a Canadian point of view, because I know we got a lot of Canadian listeners out here, about tribalism lately you've seen in Canada. I know we have a lot of points of view and a lot of polarized around politics, but there's also a lot of polarization right now around like stay homers versus get back to workers. What do you want to call that?
I would say that's definitely an area where we're people are getting polarized in like what to do about the pandemic and the lockdown. You know, there's a lot of people who they just want to get back to work. They think that it's a massive overreaction. They think that it's nothing more than a little flu, that the death rate is, pretty much insignificant, or it's on par with the flu. I mean, there's a lot of media that's blasting on people, and so they're getting hit by from the left and the right, and people aren't sure what to discern anymore. So there's people who are like, anyone who goes outside and protests to get their job back, or these people coming together in crowds, they're idiots, they're morons. You know what I mean? Like, we need to get rid of those. Like, those people are the problem. And then all the other people are saying, well, those ones are the problem because, they're living in fear and they're being shackled by society, and we're being conditioned to just obey. So there's these galactic, mindsets, ideologies, belief systems, and yeah, there's really no room for diplomacy or debate in between them. It's just like people are super highly opinionated on one end or the other, but not a whole lot of people are, in my experience, really open enough to just take a look at both sides of the information, to really look at what's really going on out there objectively,
So let's put it this way: for science's sake, no one's objective. We all have lenses on in some form or manner. But let's go back to the science, because I always like to start with the science and break it down why people feel how they feel. So you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I know there's other structures out there, but let's just go very basic, because everybody learned this, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, with self-fulfillment at the top and like your basic safety at the bottom, like, is a bear gonna eat me sort of idea. And what happens is, why do we band together in the evolution of human beings from the start to the end? However long we've been on Earth, you can debate that to now. What has made us do this? Well, it's safety. So we knew safety's in numbers, right? So if you send four people out into the wild, you know that they're going to probably fail and they're not going to be able to build a village. But if you send 12 or more human beings out together, it's studied, they will become a community, they will develop, and they will succeed. So we know that we have safety in numbers. People band together in tribes because there's safety. So if we understand human evolution, we understand why people do it. Now, why are people so pushed there? The science is telling us there's so much uncertainty. And when uncertainty rises up and we have no control, so meaning it's outside of our locus of what we can do, then we're going to go there, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to say, okay, I have to join a tribe because it's safer to take their point of view, even though I don't wholeheartedly agree with it, than to be on my own over here or to not know where I am. That uncertainty of the day is what is really getting people. Right. And so it's an interesting, when you look at the science of why people go there, it's a safety construct. It's where do I feel safe? And then they're going to identify with all those points of view because that's safer than causing a debate in that community. And I know as Canadians, we hate to bring up controversy, which would be, it'll all be okay, eh? Everything's just fine over here. Like stereotypical Canadian. So when we bring up debate or we're a little bit aggressive on these politics and topics and how we look at things, you know, then people are going to say, oh, in Canada here, we have two parties. So we have conservative and liberals. And then we have some other fringe parties like NDP and Greens and all these other ones. But these are the main ones. It's like red and blue in the States. But here they're kind of swapped in color. And people say, oh, you're this or you're that. They want to label you because people now are seeking against wisdom. Wisdom would say, judge slowly. Right? Judge slowly and discern well and be open to understanding, because the point is to become a better person, you want to prove yourself wrong. And if you're not open to being wrong, then what's going to go on? One of the
it's like everything being stuck inside and nothing new gets in and all the crap just keeps bouncing around. You're not open to learning more.
Exactly. Like one guy I don't wholeheartedly agree with his opinions. Another Canadian guy, Stephen Crowder, and he's on there and he's always like got this segment called Change My Mind. It's very controversial. He brings up some topics and, you know, it's very different. He's very right wing in terms of his politics. But I like the fact that he sits there and he actually debates topics with people because it opens the discourse. And it's an interesting idea about what tribalism is, and that people get separated in this. It's a safety zone, but it also, he shows me that you can build very logical constructs around your tribe to make it more powerful. There's other guys out there, really extreme logics, like a Ben Shapiro. And now if you want to look extreme left, you have like Christopher Hitchens, you know, and these sort of constructs over here, and you have very strong idealists that can debate really well, or Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks. Like, I thought this is what tribalism looks like on extreme scales. And so it's interesting what's happening here in Canada right now. Yeah. Because, you know, Mr. Trudeau all of a sudden decided, well, I don't want to pay attention to COVID-19 anymore. I want to pull out another topic and make the whole world go bonkers, which is in the middle of isolation when conspiracy theories are everywhere. Like every time I open my Facebook, let's take people's guns right now. That sounds like a good idea.
Blue. Just like, hey, by the way, guys, so the economy is like on this slow bleed to death kind of situation. And we know that it's very possible within, say, 6 months to a year that things could really get bad. And so before things get really bad, we have a lot of people go completely loony. We're going to take away your assault rifles just to make sure that they're over here because, crazy people and assault rifles, maybe not a good idea when the economy is going down. So we're going to take your assault rifles away. Now, what are your thoughts on that? Is this good or bad? Like, what are your actual thoughts? And if you're watching this right now or if you're listening, and chat with us. I've got a thing here. I can pull up all the different platforms. If you want to let us know your thoughts and you have a good comment on your thoughts, why they decided to pull the assault rifles out of Canada just today or yesterday or whatever it was, write your comments. And if it's good, I'll post it up on the screen here. But yeah, Jordan, it's so where do you stand on this? What's your official opinion? Do you want to take a stand?
I'm really confused. Like, I'm not confused, but there's a level of lack of education. I think there's just a lack of education around the topic of guns in Canada. It's a very highly regulated industry. If you've ever been a gun owner, and I know I grew up on a farm, so our family owned guns when I was younger. I don't now because I live in the city. I don't have a need for a gun. I just don't. We live in Canada. We got very low gun crime already, like extremely low. Unless you're in a gang or a hunting accident, you're not going to get shot here in Canada. So when you go and take assault rifles from people, it's lack of education. Because since like I think it was July 1979, AR-15s and assault rifles have been banned in Canada outside of strict conditions at the target range. If that makes sense to you, Shane. Like you can't even bring the ammunition in the same truck as the gun. They can't even be in the same vehicle as you go to the range. So you have to store your ammunition at the range, and you can transport your gun back and forth, if that makes sense to you. So it's already very, very controlled for these what we call restricted weapon types. So I found it really funny, like, hey, now let's just take them out of society and be like, well, you know, there hasn't really been a problem with them. All these weapons and these mass shootings, like the one that just happened in Nova Scotia, were illegally obtained, you know, by people who would never get past a restricted firearms license. And so I just find, on my end of the debate, I just find this law change to be kind of silly in general, because it doesn't make much sense. It's already done. Like, we've already banned restricted weapons here. That's why they're called restricted weapons.
Right.
In 1979. So it makes little or no difference. Now, do I believe that people need to own assault rifles outside of ranges, which they don't already? No, I don't. I don't think that we need a mass killing machine in society. I don't think we need it.
But what about for the people who hunt bears and they want to have their super assault rifle?
Man, you need a 30-06 to kill any size bear. So it's fine. It's a rifle, right? So, and if you need multiple shots to kill a bear, maybe you don't deserve to win that fight.
Yeah. You know, it's too bad that the bad guys can get those weapons. You know what I mean? But as far as it goes with what the good guys need, the only time that they would be if they have to fight the bad guys. Who, yeah. So, but it's Canada. I mean, we've had one major shooting. Like that was like our biggest one, wasn't it? The one that we just had.
Yeah, it was the most major one in history, I think.
Yeah,
even the bigger ones.
I mean,
Quebec
so like
had.
less people, and it's just a thing. Less people, you know, die in Canada, just period, every day than what die in the United States from gun violence every day. Like it's just a different dynamic over there.
Yeah.
Right?
So yeah, I think
people are just super peaceful in Canada. I mean, it's not a really crazy country. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that this whole issue that he brought up, it was just poorly timed politics is all. And to use an emergency situation to push across something that's so hotly debated amongst a bunch of people, it polarizes a nation. And that's why we're talking about tribalism. Yeah. And so, you know, he actually broke constitutional mandate with this, meaning like he went above and outside the law using a special order we call in Canada. And it's actually it's a breach of trust with the public. And I pose this debate in just a general open forum because I'm about freedoms and rights. I don't care that assault rifles can't be owned. I don't care. Don't own an assault rifle. Don't want to own one. If I want to go shoot one, I'll go down to Vegas or something, right? Like that's the way it goes. But what if, okay, I put the shoe on the left side because the right side of the politics, and I'm kind of in the center. I'm very centrist. I have lots of left-leaning stuff like environment and lots of like right-leaning stuff like capitalism from a business standpoint, right? But I posed the question in a general form and people lost their mind on this. I said, what if there was a conservative power in government and they used the same order to change abortion law from 3 months or 12 weeks down to 48 hours, so morning pill only? Could you imagine they severed that right to choose for a woman and they used the same order that they just used for guns? How would the left react to that? So, you know, fair consequence is that, think about this, if we let one right deteriorate with a special order that's non-constitutional, you're going to let other rights deteriorate. It doesn't matter what right it is or if you believe in the right. It matters that you believe in a freedom of democracy. And if we start just saying, hey, we can do whatever we think is pulled the right way online, oh, we got 52%, we should make that law, let's not vote on it, that can get very bad very fast. That's a utilitarian, undebated, unsubstantiated society which is going to kill people. Meaning It's what the general mob wants. Well, if the mob wants this, this is what the mob gets. It's not a good
I
society.
think I think the key is that we've been conditioned to be too agreeable. And I think the problem with agreeableness is that you avoid that confrontation, or just, like, it's in business, it's better to be not so agreeable. Agreeable on some terms, but when it comes to progressing, and like, the less agreeable you are, the more you have control, the more you can get done. You know what I mean? The more you can maneuver, the more you can wiggle around. But if you are super agreeable all the time, it just, like, you just take the common denominator. And so, because people, when they are taught and conditioned to be so, I guess, like, light-footed around things, politically speaking, or when they're, the way that they speak, like, really being on guard about certain, it's kind of just like when one layer at a time of a social conditioning to making people just want to agree and to not be heard or stand out, because it if you do stand out, you've got to really know your crap, because there's strong aggressors on the other side who like to just pierce into someone's new idea, and just with, like, a fierce ferocity of just bubble bursting, you know anger, and lashing out when people start to think for themselves or do something, because they're ostracized. You think too much. You're different. You're strange. I don't like those thoughts. No, and because the masses are so agreeable within each other, they just take any common doctrine that goes and gets filtered down. Right? People aren't thinking for themselves, and so those that do, they don't think for themselves for very long before kind of joining the herd, because it's such a mob mentality when it comes to, like, look, it really depends on what side of the fence they're listening for the news. For example, people who watch Fox probably love Trump. People who watch CNN will hate Trump. And there's, like, absolutely no in between, right?
Yeah, it's the polarization. Like, it goes back to the orange man bad theory that I've heard. Everything Trump does is wrong, it's bad, and the media is very much to blame. Like, even here in Canada, we have a very left-leaning news that everything that Trudeau does is good, which is the CBC, which is publicly sponsored, so it's much worse than the States. It's not, they're private news companies down there, so they can have any opinion they want. But like, having this, it just feeds the fire of what's happening in politics. It doesn't allow people to discern their own opinion. Like, I remember there used to be a local newscaster called Mike McArdle, and he did this little news story called The Other Side of the Story with Mike McArdle, and he'd present both sides of a story, like newscasting, like the real news. Here's what this person thinks. Here's what this person thinks. And he's like, let us know what you think. And I'm like, what genuine news was this? And that was my favorite segment. And it was always something kind of lighthearted, but at the same time politically oriented a little bit, to allow people to see there's different perceptions. And I thought that was great. And I thought, what if newscasting had the same thing nowadays? You were allowed to evaluate, like, what's important about left issue and what's important about right issue and centrist issue and fringe issue. Because, what we forget is that the left and right, are composed of different factions. Like, there's the green element, there's, like, the neoconservative elements, there's all these different types, right? And so I wish, my fervent thought is this: can people actually want to seek out the other side of the issue? I remember in school, and we did debates, and they'd give you what you have to defend or what you're for. And your job was either to present it for, and you didn't get to choose your opinion. Your job was to take the topic and either defend it or present it. And so that was a pretty, like, cool way of learning things and to open up your mind. That's why I think when people say college is dead and things like that, well, if you're in college right now and you're listening to this, go to debate club. You will learn to open your mind and listen to other opinions, and they're cool. Left, right, center, up, down, green, black, yellow, whatever. You'll learn opinions, and that's a cool thing. And you'll learn to let go of cultural bias a little bit, right? And so that's one of the things that I think that 667 is all about, is getting people to open their mind, just a little bit, And a few things that got me was debate club, and then I got to school internationally. I got to do my master's degree in France, and I got to play a little soccer in Belgium, and I got to do some fun things. And that opened my mind to a whole different like social democracy kind of way of living. And Europe is a lot more chill, right? So it's interesting. And in Europe, when I was growing up there, they would have politics on TV. Like this would be a big show, and people would gather around, and the politicians would debate ideas in front of the general public, and that would be a show on TV. And I coming from a Canada standpoint, I went, well, that's pretty uncomfortable right there. Like why are they openly debating such topics? And these were regular people, and they present opinions like both sides, or like in France they had like 4 sides of the ideas around it, right? And the nuances. And I thought, what a clever idea to actually talk things out in society. I'm like, that's why Europeans are more mature than us. And that was my frequency in my mind the whole time.
So here's one of the downsides. Now you've made a note of that, of the, I think, some extra collateral damage that might be unforeseen because of this whole lockdown thing, is people being isolated. They're not really in community anymore for talking, and even ideas are getting out. Like sometimes you go out and have a drink with the guys, and but you're talking, and you're talking about stuff. None of that's happening. So, or at least not for most people anymore. And so what is the nature that people drift back into when in isolation, like as a mass, as a whole? Like what do we revert to? Are we reverting? Are some people growing? Some people are, but a lot of people, if they're not being proactive and getting into community, they might be reverting into like, possibly a different state, like a less thinking state of mind. But there's so many inspirations out there that people can tap into on the internet, like the Jordan Petersons, the Ben Shapiro's, the Sam Harris's, like the different people who are out there who are having these debates online and having really, really intelligent, stimulating conversations. I remember when I listened to, I started seeing some, all this noise about this guy named Jordan Peterson. And so I decided to look him up. He seemed like some controversial character. I wanted to understand his stance. He somehow was getting millions of views, and it was a very mixed bag of opinions. And so I decided to go and research it. Just very well put together mind, very articulate. He's very very thorough in his thought process. He spent a lot of time thinking about things and how to articulate them in deep, meaningful ways as he sort of consciously explores the different narratives that we're operating in, and so he's a brilliant mind, and having exposure to that level of thinking mind is an inspiration to pursue that myself. You know what I mean? And I've seen a lot of minds lit up by that. But I think that was all post-COVID. Like, so the thing is, where are the thinking minds? What's going to happen to people? Are we going to see a deterioration of human wherewithal and thoughtfulness and original ideas because of this lack of social getting together? Or is this like some opportunity for us to sort of leapfrog and grow in crazy new ways?
Well, I think it will be as always. I think that some will win and some will lose. The funny thing about egalitarian society, meaning completely equal across the board, it doesn't matter your differences. One could be smarter, one could be not. One could be taller, one could be shorter, right? It doesn't matter. If you equal it all out, people still end up in leadership positions and other people follow. That's the natural human condition, because we were born with different skills. We were born with different tenets that control what we're supposed to be. In Christianity, they call them giftings, right? So everyone's got like a teacher, a preacher, a caregiver. We got to commend all our nurses and doctors, because they're unafraid, unabashed, going into the front lines trying to take on the world. So that's pretty cool to have people like that. So thank the good Lord for caregivers, and thank the good Lord for people who have a mind to study for 8 years in school and become doctors to take care of us, right? So we all have different giftings. Now, do I think people will rise or fall? I think both will happen. And I think that there's a lot of nationalistic sentiment going around the world, which is very unhealthy. It's very separatist and care about yourself first ideals. The United States is a clear evidence of this. This is a nationalistic rise. Turkey is another nationalistic rise at the moment. So we're seeing these around the world, and confronting this is a problem. For example, we had a big debate in Canada. We were pretty mad at our neighbors there because they're like, yeah, we're not going to send you any masks. And we're like, what do you mean? Like, Canada and United States have always been like brothers. Like, we fight beside each other in the big wars. Like, what do you mean you're not going to send? Well, we're keeping them. And then they reversed that decision within like one day, and then they were coming back across the border. But there's scary levels of that can happen. And the United States is the most powerful country in the world, so people grab onto that. But you think this is happening across the board. Like, if you guys want to do some research, you can watch a great show. It's called Visual Politics. I don't know if you've ever checked it out. It's with Simon Whistler, who I take as one of the best journalists in the world, period. He's based in the Czech Republic, and he presents different levels and sides of issues. So if you guys never checked out Visual Politics, it's good stuff. And he talks about how Belarus and Russia are now getting along again, and this is a big deal. Like, people don't realize that gives them a bigger foothold in Europe, and like what that will mean to the European Union itself. So like, when people they're distracted by COVID over here, and they're not paying attention to every sleight of hand that's happening over here, unless it's a gun grab. That's a bad.
Well, and or the murder hornets, and dude, I saw a meme like, so I don't know if you've seen these giant hornets. They're like this big. They're gonna come get you, and they're all over the States now. But like, okay, I saw this meme, and how true is this? I think it's kind of funny, actually. So everyone wants to get out, right? Everyone's just trying to get out of their house so bad, right? And they're rioting. They're like, protesting, and then the government's like, all right, release the bees. They're like, okay, guys, listen, we got more reasons for you to stay inside. We got murder bees, murder hornets. They're all over the place. You better stay inside, because if COVID doesn't, the murder hornets will. It's like, wow.
Yeah, it's that's
the
actually
on that's like the same as the timing with the rifles in Canada. It's kind of like, what?
Yeah, exactly. It's funny how these things play together.
Yeah.
Murder hornets. That's right. So it's actually a very scary subject, Shane. Like, if you think about the murder hornets, they actually murder bees.
Yeah, I know. They chop their heads off, and then they grab their bodies and they mush them into a little meatball along with other bees, and then they take them back to their hive. It's brutal.
Bro, you spend a lot of time on YouTube, but I'm going to take that as true, because I haven't studied the death of them. I just know that we're very low on bees because of all the chemicals that were put onto the crops by Monsanto and a couple of the other crappy companies that produce this stuff that we don't like at all. And now we have 25% global bee population that we did 10 years ago. And now you add some murder hornets to it. Well, who's going to pollinate all the crops? Crops still need to be pollinated, so we better come up with some micro nano robots to get going on this, because our bee populations are going down. Hey, business idea out there for anyone super bright who can build nano bee robots or like bee robots. I think there's an industry coming up for you.
Wow. Yeah.
AI pollination robots.
It's probably not going to happen anytime soon. And so that is another thing. You got to protect the bees, and but I know that there's been a lot of good initiatives out there to grow and expand. Like, they've got growing bees farms, down to a science now. A lot of these guys are able to make hives that are able to produce millions of bees and keep replicating over and over and over again. So there's a lot of work on the other end to just produce more bees, right? To get them going, and so it's an interesting battle, that's for sure.
But knowing human beings, and now that we have CRISPR, which is a little genetic editor, we're gonna be like, what's the answer to murder hornets? Giant bees. No.
Yeah.
Right? That's humans.
I actually saw, speaking of CRISPR, I saw some videos on the internet about people who were using CRISPR kits, and they were adding glow-in-the-dark algae or something, some gene from that, to cats and mice, and they had glow-in-the-dark cats and mice, and I'm like, whoo, man, like that is getting dangerously out there, We
all know at sometimes that would have been handy in the night when we didn't have a flashlight.
Right, like, yeah. And the other question is, can I turn myself glow in the dark?
Like it's funny that gene editing is something that is going to happen and we can't really fight it. And we say, are people playing God? And they are going to. Human beings are going to do that because the technology is there. And not everyone has the same morality, right, around what is right and what is wrong. Is science progress, or is it regression if we're playing with our genes? So that's a scary big topic that the world's going to confront in a big way. We had a movie that came out a long time ago I think it was called Gattaca. Did you ever see that, where it was all gene edited babies and things like that? Yeah, it was very interesting. So if anyone wants to tune in and check out that topic, but gene editing is going to be a big thing in the future. Another thing that Elon Musk is working on, who's I swear going to be the world's first supervillain. Mark my words, I've said it live on air. He will be the world's first supervillaon. Okay, he's got Skynet.
Elon, I still want a Tesla, buddy.
Yeah, right.
I don't agree with you, Jordan, but go ahead.
No. The reason I say that is he's launched Skynet, and he has like 4,000 satellites in low orbit, and he can basically control every electronic on the planet if he wants to. Like, he has the capability and intelligence. I love Elon. Like, listen, I've been invested in Tesla since like 2011. I love the guy, but the fact is he has that ability. If he wanted to be like the first super villain, he definitely could be, right?
Wow. Yeah, he literally could.
Elon has the power. So
we have to do a podcast on CRISPR and Neuralink, the future of humanity. Like, where are we going with these situations? That's going to be a whole episode right there.
So uploading your consciousness to live forever. What a premise. And for like the religious people out there, okay, whether you're Christian, Muslim, Jewish, or you live in or you have some other religion that you believe in an eternity, an afterlife, would you want to upload your consciousness? That's a real question. Myself, no, I don't want to live forever. That sounds like a long time, especially to be trapped in a machine. I really don't. I think that death is a great part of life. We all get to take that journey. And so, that's my personal opinion on it. But what a topic, and what a topic Neuralink is. Like, how fast you can learn. It's like Matrix. Remember when they were plugging Neo in and he learned programs in his brain? Like, holy man.
I actually just watched The Matrix again, to be honest with you. I wanted to check it out one more time because see if there's any messages in there for these times. And yeah. That is, and then when you add on like the CRISPR kit situation where people can, genetically, it's going to be crazy, man. Like, to have your consciousness stuck in a machine, but how do you know that it's actually your real consciousness? Like, maybe it's just perceived by the people around it, but really the essence of the spark of your life is faded into darkness,
I think that's where we're going to... Yeah, I think you're right, Shane. I think that's where we're going to separate the people who are spiritual in some way, like believe in a universal essence or God or whatever they term it as, and those who don't. And I think the ones who believe in the universe, in God, in that belief, the spiritual realm, they will not upload their consciousness.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think we're already uploaded. Like, are we already in it? And this is like layers of Inception, like that movie. So it's going to be like a dream upon a dream upon a dream. Right? Like, it's crazy. What a crazy world we live in. And that's why this brings it back to the main topic. That's why we're entering tribalism. Because this extreme uncertainty, speed of innovation, things are changing. What do I do? Where do I go? What's the point of life? Everything's moving so quickly. How do I create value for other people? What makes me significant? All these questions are running through a person's mind.
Yeah.
Like, grappling with that is not easy. And for everybody out there listening, and you go, holy crap, you're right. Sorry, I didn't mean to put an uncertainty in you. Because there's great hope. There's great people who can give you a lot of ideas about where to go and what to do. And how to follow your passions and love what you do. Like, Shane does it every day. Like, you're out there playing guitar and, living life and staying in tune. And like, why don't you tell them a little bit about, let's get back to the health part, right? Just the health. And you tie health and kind of Sabbath together, which is interesting. But talk about how you use music to kind of tune into like the spirit and tune into yourself. I think it's a cool idea for people to hear.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting leap we've gone from. So,
That's what this show's about, man.
yeah.
Crazy
All
topics.
right. Crazy conversations with Jordan. We're just jumping on these tracks now.
So whatever track you want, you can go the
No,
other
no.
way. Go on.
We were talking about the rise of tribalism, and I think that the rise of tribalism can equal a slow diminishing of individualism and intellectualism and creativity and I think it can create a lot more cliques and separation in society. And I think that I think we need to get more to just a place of humbly understanding ourselves and others as, just highly intrinsically valuable human beings. Right? And anyways, so
So let me ask that question then. So I'm going to go back to that. There's an interesting point. Growing up here in Canada, we were lucky enough to have a very ethnically diverse society. And what always got me was that our friends, our Indo-Canadian friends, would live together in a home collectively because they had different ideals than all my white friends. Okay? So they live and they still live with their parents, and like now that I've gone through the cycle of having kids and stuff, I'm like, man, I wish I was way less individually minded, way more collectively minded in some ways. So, is tribalism bad in every way? That's a question too. So what I'm saying is, my question to you is, what is too individualistic?
what is
And
too
what
individualistic?
yeah.
I need some variables to, like.
In your life, where is
Okay,
individualism went wrong?
individualistic is too much if it's self-sabotaging. If it's trying to prove at great cost to yourself, to others, who you are, and it costs and it has a price, right? Like as if it's self-sabotaging, like um I'll just say straight up, like, there's, the people who get the ear things. My personal opinion here, I've had earrings and piercings, but when it gets to like the point where it's like this giant thing, like if you're not in like some tribe where that's like an original thing, and you're living out in North America, and now you got this giant ear thing that's way down here, it's getting hooked and snagged on stuff. I mean, it's like, is that individualism, or was that just kind of getting to the point of self-sabotage, and now you got this like, hula hoop of an ear, you know what I mean? Might not have been necessary, maybe causing more problems than it's worth, you know what I mean? Like I had a labret piercing once, and it was like I kept smacking my mouth on the thing. I put chairs down, and I'd always headbutt, and I'd split my lip. I just took the damn thing out. But, I had a tongue ring, but I was going, chewing on the thing all day long. It was making sound. It was like, I just, one day I woke up and my tongue was so full, I couldn't even, I took the damn thing out. It just didn't work. So, it was borderline self-sabotage, right? Because it was also, I mean, it's not an impressive thing when you're having a conversation with someone and all you can hear is just like, they're clicking their teeth. So for me, it wasn't very, beneficial. But, individualism is something you should explore. And I think that there's safe realms to do that. And I think it's a beautiful and powerful thing. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't explore so many different realms. But the times I explored individualism, where it was like at self-sabotaging level, there was deeper things that I was hiding from, that I was trying to cover. And so when I got to the core of those things, and I didn't need such a extreme level of shouting out to the world who I am. I could display it more humbly, I suppose. So.
Yeah, so it's an interesting concept to circle back around. Tribalism has its place. It definitely does. But the danger of tribalism is that you accept everything that your tribe tells you. You have to question authority all the time. That's the strength of democracy. If there's not people yelling out from the sky questioning decisions, it can get very autocratic quickly, meaning very authoritative in nature. And Yeah, I just think that right now in Canada, I think we have here we have a major divide between West and East. And if you saw our last election, that was so true. Everything from Manitoba to BC was one color of political party, basically, except a couple fringes of Vancouver. But literally the whole thing, that had never happened. And that happened. And it shows this stark divide between East and West. And I think that people here to understand that our tribe is not East and West. Our tribe is not conservative and liberal. Our tribe is Canadian. And we forgot this. We forgot our national identity is in our flag. Our grandfathers went and fought over multiple wars to protect that nationalism. We are proud of our country from East to West. And personally, I don't want to see that dissipate. I don't want to see that fall apart. And I want to see our tribe come together as Canadians. We used to nationally identify so strong in taking care of others and being a world leader in that. And we came together and it was bipartisan. And the things that only things we fight over are like, how do we make our money? Should we pump more oil or do more of this? And that was literally it. Now that still exists, but now there's all these other topics that just kill us from day in, day out and cause us to be in these tribes. And I think they're silly in nature. I think that there's a nice balance. And I think when you sit down, and I found this in life, when you sit two people down with complete opposite points of view and they actually have a conversation with one another, they come away with great understanding and they find a lot of agreement because there's a lot of things that unite us versus make us different. And so for this, I think that if our danger with tribalism is it will erode our rights. And so if we move completely into tribal base, we'll divide, and that division will get greater and greater over time. And that's what's happening, I think, in the United States. That's what's happening in Canada. That's what's happening in Turkey. That's what's happening in Belarus and lots of different places. In the UK as well, even though UK is a little bit more united than the other two. So I think that people have to be very wary of what they read on the internet and go have real conversations. Like you said, Shane, right? Go out with beer with people, but go out with a beer with someone you don't agree with. There's an old scripture saying there's no merit in loving those who love you. There's only merit in loving those you don't want to love. Right? It's a good old piece of scripture, isn't it?
That's a good one.
So how do you love people you don't agree with? How do you love people you don't like? What actions can you go out and do tomorrow to help those people? Right? So, fundamentally, I think that's what makes character of a human being is even though I completely disagree with you, buddy, come here, I'll take care of you.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's what makes people uniquely North American. I think in the United States, in Canada, primarily I've seen on my travels of the world, this is where if there's a crisis, they don't care who you are. They're going to help you. If there's a flood, there's a tornado, there's a storm, there's something going on, people show up and they help. They don't care who they're helping. They just show up to help because that's in the nature of who they are. So I think, that's a good thing about North America as a group is we've really stuck together for the last, 150 years or so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been good. Hey. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about this. The last thing I had up there about tribalism, Shane, was religion in politics. Oof. Now let's go to this and let's just make it very clear that even Jesus said, let what Caesar's be Caesar's and let what God's be God's. So there's a very clear separation of church and state.
Yeah.
Now, the right loves to put religion into politics, but you know what the left does? They have their own form of religion, but they don't call it religion, which is interesting. It's non-religion. Non-religion has become religion. And I don't think that people on either side are realizing what they're doing. Right doesn't realize that the philosophy they're ascribing to is wrong because it said don't do that. And then the left is putting their religion on their non-religion as religious on the politics itself. So it's an interesting tribes that are forming to go against one another.
Yeah.
So what do you think of that, Shane? What do you think about the separation of religion and politics? This is a tight topic, man.
I mean, yeah. So I mean, regardless of how you do it, you know, different, religious, you know, religions will have say in government and politics because they also want to make sure that their politicians don't oust them. You know what I mean? Like, they have an interest in making sure that you don't get some, totalitarian regime in that would, kick out all religions and stuff like that. So there's obviously a dynamic there. But I think at the upper echelon, there's always power plays and power struggles, and it's not even about religion; it's about power, and it's about because when you have someone who is, and this is I think why when Jesus poo-pooed on just the way organized religion was, you know what I mean, and how it was so tied into state and affairs, and it made it so legal that there wasn't room for grace. You know what I mean? There wasn't room for true mercy. There wasn't really room for understanding or having conversations to help. It was either like right, wrong. It was like black, white. It was like do or die. And so that's the problem when a state goes back to church and state together instead of church separate from state. And because you again you eliminate the ability for free thought. You know what I mean? It's like you have to adhere to these principles and this rule, whether you like it or not. And
True.
like and there's examples all over the world. Obviously, anytime that a nation has been run by the religion, like the Catholics were beheading people, and there was a lot of crazy times back in the Dark Ages. You know what I mean? And there's other places all over the world that, like, for example, in the Middle East, when there's church and state together, people get beheaded, and, there's like stonings, and there's real like people acting out the laws of their religion. So do I feel like it's a good thing for church and state to be one? Absolutely not. And again, it eliminates free thinking.
Yeah, and it also causes like quick mob mentality,
Yeah.
right? Because the problem,
yeah, like it's not good.
Yeah, right. So I'm a firm believer in church and state far apart from one another, and always should be, because if you look at the major religion here in North America, it's Christianity, right? It still is. It's still the predominant. I think 60% something ascribed to this. And Jesus had some interesting things to say about how tribalism erodes things, and he said, he said a lot of things. Like, he got judged all the time. He'd go sit with the prostitutes and all these different people, and they judge him, and he say, well, does a healthy person need a doctor? And they're like, no. Well, that's why I sit with these people. They need a guide, right? And so he understood some principles. And I think that we can learn a lot from transitioning the same thing. It's like, why do we always want to talk to people who agree with us? Because it's easy. But I think as individuals, if we have ideas that we think can strengthen, that's a key word, strengthen other people and allow them to live a better life and increase our ability to act as a community, then we should share those ideas with other people. But we have to go share them with the people that don't agree with us. So we have to go into what we proverbial fire on 667, right? One step out of hell. And we got to shout our message so we can bring people across into understanding and openness of debate, and clearly being, okay, I'm okay to disagree with you. Like, I have friends, I have my one friend, Daniel. I love the guy. He's from Toronto, but we disagree on everything, which is great, and we always talk back and forth, and we tell we appreciate one another, and we'll eat together, and we'll break bread. We disagree on everything. I think the only thing we agree on is staying in shape, and that's a good idea. I think we got our one thing we come together on, right? So that's really great, and I appreciate that. But I think that people, if they're more open-minded and easygoing about these things, they'll find a good balance. But we're too quick to slot people in, especially one word today that I just hate. People call people racist for everything. If you call, right now, if you called someone that's different from you, it doesn't matter if you're calling another culture calls a white person out for something, that they get called racist, or vice versa. If I call out someone of color in power and say they're doing something wrong, that I'm a racist. Like, that's got to stop. That labeling. If someone's bad at their job, you're allowed to say, hey, you're bad at your job. It doesn't matter what race you are. And that polarization of everyone being scared to be labeled something so devious as racist, that's where things come in, and why tribalism forms, because people are scared of being labeled something in the general public. Well, man, like here in Canada, we don't face as much racism because we grew up in a very ethnically diverse society, right? So we, like in my class, I had Chinese people, I had Indian people, we have black people together with white people. It was fantastic. We were like a melange of all these different people. And we had like different languages and everything going on. You know, it's Canada, it's crazy. And so we didn't really grow up with like that palpable problem that they have in the South, right? We didn't have hundreds of years of slavery induced on our society. So we don't have that same je ne sais quoi, as they say in French, right? That same feeling in apparition. But we have to make sure, I think, as society, that we don't go throwing along strong labels without discernment and understanding. Because otherwise we shut down general discourse.
That is the conversation of the time right now. Everything is just super divisive. It's like you have to immediately, look at someone based off of what someone else has said and judge that person based off of how they judge them, based off of their narrative and their story. And it's so convincing and it's so empowering, and it's like that person is definitely doing this. And the way that they showcase things in the news is it's so powerfully, so vilifying the narratives, because they know how to trigger people to get people to look at something with judgment, right? They're so good at this. They're just maestros. They're magicians with it, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, and again, but then there's two sides to that, but they're both, no one knows how to take the best of both worlds. It's just all on one side or all on the other. And yeah. And I think the main conversation here is that there's conversations to enter. You know what I mean? Like you're allowed to explore and to look into these opinions and these ideas, these ideologies, etc. But don't also forget to look at both sides so that you can actually form a proper objective viewpoint on something, rather than just being a biased individual who really only has one perspective, which wasn't really groomed. It was more just planted and given, right? It wasn't really truly cultivated for depth. If you only stick on one side, you got to look at both sides.
And that's the hard thing to do. Like at the same time as you can also listen to centrist viewpoints, and you're allowed to hold viewpoints that are across the table from one another. Like I'm big into environment, but I'm also very big into business. And how do you balance the two effectively? And I think that needs to be a real conversation. It doesn't need to be polar opposites. It doesn't need to be like, hey, do we shut down the oil sands and build more green energy? It's how do we balance the two effectively and come up with a good solution for the future of our country, right? Because Alberta needs the oil sands, and so does Canada, and producing our own oil up there. So what environmental technologies can we invest in as a nation to make that cleaner and safer for the environment to make happen, right? So it's not like environmentalists are going to get their way and shut down all of Alberta all of a sudden. That's not going to happen, right? It's not reality. So I like how a lot of people play an idealism, and this tribalism place, where they think that it can actually go that way. Like it just can't. Like I wish we'd have grounded in reality, nice little movements possible that makes sense, instead of this like complete like polar opposite points of view. Like imagine the work we could get done as Canadians coming up with business ideas, yeah, and being able to support innovation and technologies if we thought within the frame of like regular conversational connectiveness with other people, and saying, hey, yeah, point of view, I don't 100% agree with it, but you have it, so let's work together to make it a little bit better, So And we're getting there. Like, we started using reusable bags in all our grocery stores, and that was fundamental. But then COVID-19 happened, so they're like, "Oh, we got rid of all plastic bags. That was a bad idea." And I was like, all that work.
Yeah,
So,
I can't
so
imagine how many and that's the one thing is my heart really goes out to all the people who put in a lot of work for creating events, concerts, like the people who are putting on conventions and just the countless hours that go into that stuff, and just all of a sudden just like months and months of work and preparation for some big events that happen, and then it's just to have it all just oh yeah.
evaporate. And that bag issue kind of brings back to sense like what's important, and people have went back to basics. They've stopped consuming as much as they have. We found out that money isn't really a real thing at times. Like, governments can print. The US just printed, well, we'll print $5 trillion, and their dollar did not deflate. It went up. Like, it did deflate. Like, their dollar's stronger than everybody else's, and they printed a crap ton more of it. That made no sense to me from an economic point of view. I'm saying U.S. might as well print themselves right out of debt at this point, because they're just like, turn on the money press. We don't have any debt.
Yeah, we're like, hey guys, look, here's the bottom line. We just all debts canceled. No more debt. We'll just start fresh.
Well, why not, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, here in Canada, we're like printing money on mass, and we're like, yeah, a little bit of money for you. And my businesses have been getting tons of it, so I'm happy. Like, I'll take a 40,000 here, 150 there. Thank you very much. I'll take your wage subsidy. And you're like, okay, that's great, because we actually suffered major losses because of the crisis, right?
Yeah.
And that helped. But it said to me that this money thing, not so serious anymore.
We'll see. I mean, yeah, it'll be interesting over the next few years to see how all this kind of unfolds. But speaking of that, Jordan, our hour is up, my friend. It is it has been a fun episode. I think next week the idea of talking about CRISPR kits and Neuralink will be a fascinating subject on six packs. The future. What is the future? So I think we're gonna get real geared up for next week's episode, and you never know, we may or may not have a guest speaker on. It just we'll see what happens and unfolds through the week. But we will be talking about Neuralink and CRISPR kits, the future of humanity, and how is that going to look? All right, we're going to explore that.
Are we qualified to talk about that?
Oof, like, totally not. So we're just going to be two guys who YouTube, Google searched for like a week and came up with a bunch of crazy opinions, and you're probably going to love them.
We're going to be like London Real right now. Totally not qualified, right? I remember my favorite thing, Shay, before you go, was Joe Rogan's interview of Elon Musk. And Elon Musk was just telling him things, and he leaned across and said, I'm too dumb to be in this conversation. Like, because he's talking about thermodynamic and rockets, and Joe Rogan went, huh? And he literally says, no, I'm too dumb for this, Elon. You gotta stop. Right? Because the guy's like crazy smart, like crazy. So yeah, two non-qualified, totally unqualified people are going to wrap off about this. You want to enjoy, join in the comments, shoot things below. We'll definitely go over some Q&As from last time, from this time, next time, and that will be a lot of fun.
And if you're catching this on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button right around there. All right. Cheers, guys.